Most people, toddlers to grandmas, would be able to identify these two images as a comic strip, something you glance at in the newspaper for a quick laugh to distract you from all of the depressing stories you've been reading. Many people's definition of comics stops there, though, which is why Scott McCloud wrote his book, Understanding Comics, The Invisible Art. The exigence McCloud is addressing is that people define what comics can be too narrowly and stereotype them as bad art, stupid stories, often with guys in tights, and as crude, poorly drawn kiddie fare. In other words, the art form is not taken seriously, and he wants to change that. Perhaps if you're a teacher, you have experienced pushback when trying to introduce a graphic novel into your curriculum, from colleagues unfamiliar with the medium or traditionalists who can't see how it could possibly fit into the canon. That we feel the need to give comics the fancy name graphic novel is evidence of a belief that comics do not belong in an academic setting. But hand one of those doubting colleagues McCloud's book, and they will be forced to change their mind. McCloud reminds us that new media is often misunderstood, feared, and resisted. Perhaps there was no other way for him to tell his story. But his decision to write a book examining the medium of comics as a comic book was brilliant. A cartoon of Scott McCloud himself travels with us through the pages and kindly holds our hand as he dives into complex, interdisciplinary topics and asks big questions like, what is art? What is writing? How do we define success as an artist? And what does it mean to be human? This is no kiddie fare. He starts off the book with the rhetorical strategy of definition, and it turns out defining comics is not an easy task. Most basically, comics are sequential art. Taken individually, the pictures here are merely pictures. But when put in sequence, the image is transformed into something more. In the end, he comes up with a more nuanced definition. Juxtaposed pictorial and other images in deliberate sequence intended to convey information and to produce an aesthetic response in the viewer. But he also notes that defining comics is an ongoing process. McCloud then attempts to trace the history of comics and offers examples of ancient sequential art and of different movements in art history and comics. But with his characteristic modesty, he gladly admits no one knows exactly where or when comics originated. He spends a significant portion of the book teaching the vocabulary of comics. He opens up the hood of the metaphorical comics car, and he takes us through every part of the engine. This is particularly helpful for teachers who have never taught a graphic novel, or for those of us who already teach one but don't fully understand its inner workings. For example, do you know the difference between a picture and an icon? An icon is an image used to represent a person, place, thing, or idea, while pictures are images designed to actually resemble their subjects. Cartooning is defined as amplification through simplification, as you can see in this sequence of the same image. One unique appeal of cartoons is that because they are more abstract, they are more universal. As humans, we have a tendency to see ourselves in everything. So because we can see ourselves in cartoons, we can more fully enter the world the comic has created. In Reading in a Participatory Culture, Jenkins argues that teachers should shift their approach to reading from passive to participatory. Comics demand participation to make them work. Take these panels for example. The space between the panels is called the gutter. The gutter is a magical place because it forces us to use our imaginations. We become a silent accomplice, a partner in this crime. McCloud also goes through the different style approaches comics can take. For instance, there are 6 different types of panel-to-panel transitions. He breaks down statistics of which are most commonly used and how different ones might influence the narrative. American comics, often focused on efficiency, have traditionally not utilized aspect-to-aspect transitions, which are often employed by Japanese comics. This particular transition works well when trying to establish mood or a sense of place where time seems to stand still. MacLeod also notes that as a monosensory medium, comics rely on only one of our senses to convey a whole world of experience. He highlights the many ways comic artists work to seamlessly combine words and pictures, color, and to convey sound, scent, movement, emotion, and time. The best comics balance images and language harmoniously, like a dance. But traditional thinking has a long-held belief that great works of art and literature are only possible when these two forms of expression are kept separate. The problem is that as humans, we love pictures. Our students are very familiar with images and icons. Just look at their Instagrams and emoji-filled text messages. The beauty of comics is that they allow the world of writing and pictures to come back together again and can explore any number of topics, not just superhero adventures. In fact, comics may be better suited to explore topics that are difficult to write about. Take Art Spiegelman's Mouse, which explores the Holocaust, or Linda Berry's heart-wrenching memoir, 100 Demons. MacLeod ends his book by encouraging everyone to step into the realm of comics. He notes it is a welcoming world, as close as pen or pencil and paper, and that one only needs the desire to be heard, the will to learn, and the ability to see to get started. He admires the versatility of comics, which contain all of the potential imagery of film and painting, plus the intimacy of the written word. Perhaps most importantly, he notes that we inhabit a world and bodies that make it easy to feel isolated and alone, and that comics can pull us into their worlds and help us to connect with and understand one another and ourselves. So next time someone hands you the Sunday Funnies, you can smile knowingly, or maybe even tell them there's more to comics than meets the eye.